Hello, this is D, and I'm back with another video, and we have some developing stories today. We have some updates on the FTC. We have a huge bombshell on the Activision merger with Microsoft. And I gotta be honest with you guys, not all the news is good for Microsoft today. Now, you know that on the 22nd of June, which is this week, Thursday, Microsoft is going up against the FTC in court. And the FTC has replied to Microsoft and Activision's opposition for their preliminary injunction. Now, this is coming from Florian Mueller, and like usual, we'll leave a link in the description down below. Now, he says that the FTC's legal strategy comes down to this. They say that the Nintendo Switch is not a Generation 9 console. Now, that's a bunch of nonsense. Of course, it's the latest generation Nintendo Switch. It doesn't need to have the same power as the Xbox or the PlayStation. It's their current generation console. And they're selling a lot of units, and they're selling a lot of software. So that just doesn't make sense. Now, the reason why the FTC doesn't want this brought in is because Nintendo and Microsoft, they struck a deal for their cloud games. So this would kind of go against their argument that Microsoft is against the competition when they give the competitor access to their cloud games. Now, they argue that even if Nintendo was included in the market, that the anti-competitive effects would still be the same, and that's just a bunch of nonsense. Now, they further say that the court should not give weight to Microsoft agreements with Nvidia, others, or its EC remedies. And this is ridiculous. Microsoft, they didn't have to give all the cloud competitors access to the license day one. This was only ruled in the EC's region. And Microsoft said, you know what? We're going to do this worldwide to all cloud competitors. They also did deals with Nvidia, with Nintendo. How could this not be brought into the court case? How could this not be put into consideration? Ridiculous. Now, the FTC argues that Microsoft and ABK should discuss these remedies at the August FTC in-house trial. So there you have it. They're trying to block this deal so they can have their in-house trial in August. But they have to prove that Microsoft is going to do some harm to the industry. And Judge Corley, she's kind of aware of a lot of the things that are in the case. Now, the FTC points to the CMA's rejection of Microsoft's proposed remedies. And once again, this is hypocrisy at its finest. They go ahead and say, ignore what Microsoft is doing with Nvidia, with Nintendo, or the EC remedies, but look at what the CMA is doing over there and how they blocked it. And that just doesn't make sense. First of all, the CMA and the FTC, they're blocking for completely different reasons. Now you wonder why they met so many times. The CMA and the FTC, they're working together. Most definitely. They both want to block this deal. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'm just going to go out and say it. I think there's a lot of politics in play. And I think Sony is trying hard for this deal not to go through. It's really evident because they know once this deal goes through that Microsoft is going to be in a much better position to compete with them. And they can't have that. And they're fighting tooth and nail. And that brings me to today's huge story. Sort of huge story. We're going to get into the weeds of it. But it was breaking news. Now, this was broken by Stephen Totilo, I think that's how you say his name, and he goes on to say that new lawyers in the gamer antitrust suit against Microsoft Activision deal have been arguing over Exhibit K. Why? Because supposedly it shows an Xbox executive saying that they plan around buying Activision is to put PlayStation out of business. Oh man, I'm telling you, Sony is trying so hard for this deal not to go through. They're the biggest opposition to Microsoft in this deal. Yes, we know that Google doesn't want this deal to go through, but it's Sony doing all of the heavy lifting. Now, some people are confused. They think that this is with the FTC's case. This is not. The same judge that's handling the FTC case, she threw out their preliminary injunction. They're trying to appeal it, and their lawyers are arguing this in court. Now, to my understanding, the judge, she actually saw this email, and she still threw out their case. Now, apparently they got this from Sony. This is the word on this, that this came directly from Sony, and Sony passed it on to these gamers lawsuit lawyers. Now, who is funding these gamers lawsuit? Because these lawyers, they cost a lot of money. I don't think it's just some random Twitter users. Who is behind this? And can you even trust what is being said? Can you trust the source of this document? Is it a real document? Do we just have to take their word for it? Because the judge, apparently, she didn't believe that, and she still threw out their case. Now, we're going to go back to Florian Mueller's page because I feel this next part is really relevant. Now, he goes, note that both the FTC and merging parties have a filing deadline around close of business day today, proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law. So the FTC, they didn't bring this up. It's not in their filing, and they can't use it. because the filing ended today. So this is not in the FTC's case. So all the people that are making a big deal out of this, it's not a big deal. This is the gamers' lawsuit, and I think this is going to be thrown out because I don't think it's credible. I really don't. And either does Florian. I'm going to go to his Twitter once again, and we're going to see what he says. Now, he confirms that email was actually already mentioned in the preliminary hearing in the private gamers lawsuit on the 12th of May. Now, apparently it was really laughed at, and Judge Corley was not impressed, and she threw it out. So all these people jumping up and down like this is a smoking gun, it's not. And it was already thrown out in court. They're trying to appeal it, and the evidence is just not credible. So sorry, guys, this is not the smoking gun that you claimed it to be. However, the FTC did fire some shots, and they said that Microsoft apparently told the US courts that the majority of the PlayStation gamers do not play Call of Duty, and they actually put this in their filing. So this will be presented in court. Now, I don't know all the details of this. We're going to read it right here. He says the defendants, they mischaracterized the nature of the foreclosure analysis in the vertical merger in their telling. This is a case where the Microsoft will put Call of Duty for the PlayStation, but it's not the FTC's claim. Vertical mergers can result in harm via total foreclosure. For example, withholding Activision games entirely from rivals, or via partial foreclosure. For example, degrading Activision content or otherwise offering an inferior product to rivals. So they're trying to present this as evidence that Microsoft is going to take Call of Duty off of the PlayStation because they said PlayStation gamers, they don't play it. I don't know how this is going to play out in court. It seems kind of weak to me. Now, if you want to think this is a smoking gun as well, you can go ahead and think that. I don't think it's really damning information. But what I can see and what I can say is that Sony really doesn't want this deal to go through. The FTC and the CMA, they're working together. They don't want the deal to go through either. This is a big deal, and this begins in a couple of days. Now, on Florian's page, he goes, the court has changed their mind about public access to the FTC versus Microsoft and Activision preliminary injunction hearing. Audio will be available, not video. So this is pretty good news. We'll be able to hear the case. We won't be able to see what's happening, but I do think it is in the public's interest to know what's going on with this case. So we're going to have some really good information. We're not going to have to wait for the transcripts. We're going to know what happens in court each day, and I'm going to cover as much as I can for you guys. I gotta be honest with you guys, there's a lot of breaking news with this stuff, so I try to bring it out as quick as possible. Right now, I'm getting ready for the RDX podcast. I decided just to record this audio so I could get this out to you guys as soon as possible. So it's very, very interesting. It's a huge court case. It begins this week, and Microsoft, they're not playing around. They're sending in Satya Nadella, Phil Spencer, and many high Xbox executives to defend against the FTC. The PlayStation, you know what they're doing? They're sending Jim Ryan via video. And Microsoft, they fired right away at Sony. They're saying, unlike Sony, our most senior executives will testify in person. Now, this is coming from Tom Warren. I'll link it also in the description down below. And it's coming from The Verge. And it's just crazy. This is a huge case. When you have the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, going to court, Phil Spencer, this is crazy. Activision CEO Bobby Koch will be there. This is going to be a huge case, and Sony doesn't even have the decency to show up in court. They're going to show up via video. I think that doesn't bode well for Sony. It really doesn't. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, there's so much politics at play here. Sony definitely doesn't want this deal to go through, but I got to be honest with you guys, it's showtime. We are in the final quarter. We're facing the final bosses. We're going to find out what's going on with this case. They're trying all kinds of things. Suddenly, emails are appearing from Sony. Sony's providing these emails from Microsoft, stating that Matt Booty said that after the Activision acquisition, that they're going to put PlayStation out of business. Tell me how credible that sounds when it's coming from Sony. Like, honestly. It's so credible that the judge threw it out in court. It's so credible that the FTC is not using it in court. Come on, use your head here, guys. Sony is desperate, and they're pulling out all the stops to try to get this deal to fail. And it's crazy. The FTC is arguing that the preliminary injunction should be granted because they have a big hearing coming up in August. But their evidence doesn't support the claims that they have against Microsoft. Now, I was editing my video and a bunch of news just dropped, so I felt I needed to really add it in to keep you guys as up to date as possible. Now, Stefan Totilo, who originally broke the story on the Microsoft email, he gave us an update. He goes on to say that a Microsoft rep shares a significant update. While they still can't divulge the contents of the email, they'll be able to now say it was sent in 2019. So this is way before the ABK merger. It has nothing to do with that deal. Florian Miller gave his take on it. He said, great, so the fake news cycle can stop and we can again focus on what really matters. So as I said earlier in the video, this is not the smoking gun that you thought it would be. And Sony is behind all of this. I'm so certain of it that we have an update. Sony just filed support of the FTC's position. So if you had any doubts who's really behind this, who's putting the battery inside of the FTC's back, it's none other than Sony. Sony wants Microsoft to fail. They don't want this deal to go through because they know once this deal goes through, Microsoft's going to be in a much better position to compete with them. And Florian Miller says that the job of Sony's PlayStation team is to gain market share at the expense of Xbox up to the point of eliminating it and vice versa. As the Ninth Circuit said in the FTC versus Qualcomm, anti-competitive conduct is illegal. Hyper-competitive conduct is not, it's even encouraged. So Microsoft being the underdog, it's okay if they want to eliminate Sony or if they just want to compete with them. There's nothing wrong with them doing whatever they can to compete with Sony and make the playing field level. However, when Sony is the market leader, according to the Ninth Circuit judge on the FTC versus Qualcomm case, anti-competitive conduct is illegal. This is very important. All this stuff is going to play out in court. So that's pretty much it. I think we should be all up to date now by the time this video drops. It's very interesting, all the events that have played out. And I just see the drama intensifying. The court case is dropping this Thursday. We're going to be covering it on the channel. We're going to have audio coverage of it. Unfortunately, I don't think we can rebroadcast that audio coverage, but it will give us a better idea of what happened in the courtroom instead of having to rely on the transcripts that come out maybe a week later after the case. Now, this case, I don't expect it to go long. I think it's going to be maybe 4 or 5 days. I think by early next week, we're going to have the judge's decision on this case. So it's going to get really interesting. We're going to find out more later on this week. I'm going to come back and give you guys some more information, but I want to know what you guys think about all of this. What do you think about the gamers lawsuit and their supposed internal email from Matt Booty stating that Microsoft is out to put PlayStation out of business? What do you think about the information from the FTC stating that Microsoft said that PlayStation players don't play Call of Duty? Do you think this will have any play in the court case? Do you think that the FTC's case is better now and that they'll be granted this preliminary injunction? I want to know what you guys think about this, so let me know in the comment section down below. I'm a little bit tired. I thank you guys for supporting the channel. I appreciate you guys. Hit the like button, share this out, and I'll see you guys on the next one.